May 29, 1453, before dawn. The walls have held for 1,000 years. Tonight they fall. Mehmed II's army, 60,000 men, 69 cannons, has been battering Constantinople for 55 days. Inside the walls, 7,000 defenders, soldiers, mercenaries, armed civilians, every man who could hold a sword. And then, a gate. One small unlocked gate in the ancient walls. Ottoman soldiers pour through. Within hours, it is over. The last Roman emperor dies fighting in the streets. The city that called itself the center of the Christian world belongs to Islam. But here is what almost no one knows. The cannon that destroyed those walls, the most powerful weapon of the medieval world, was offered to Constantinople first. They couldn't afford it. What if they had? To understand 1453, you need to understand what Constantinople had already lost long before Mehmed arrived. The Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Roman Empire, the direct heir of Rome itself, had once controlled the entire Eastern Mediterranean. Egypt, Syria, Anatolia, Greece, the Balkans. 1,000 years of Roman civilization, continuing east while the Western Empire collapsed. By 1453, all of that was gone. What remained was essentially one city, Constantinople itself, a handful of scattered outposts and walls. The famous Theodosian walls, triple layers of stone and mortar, 20 kilometers long, built in the 5th century and never successfully breached in 1,000 years. Those walls were the last thing standing between a dying empire and the most powerful military force in the region. The population had collapsed from 400,000 in the 12th century to 40,000 by the 1450s. The treasury was empty. The army was a ghost of what it had once been. Constantine XI, the last emperor, could put 7,000 men on those walls. Soldiers, Genoese mercenaries, armed civilians, anyone who could hold a weapon. Mehmed II brought 60,000. Now meet Orban. He was a Hungarian engineer, some accounts say Transylvanian, and he had designed something the world had never seen. A bronze cannon of extraordinary size, 9 meters long, a barrel 1 meter across, capable of firing a stone ball weighing 500 kilograms over 1.5 kilometers. Orban brought this design to Constantinople first. Constantine XI's advisors looked at the plans. They understood what this weapon could do, and they told Orban they could not pay him. The treasury was empty. The empire that had once commanded the wealth of the Eastern Mediterranean could not afford the one weapon that might have saved it. Orban left Constantinople and traveled to Adrianople, where Mehmed II was preparing his campaign. Mehmed looked at the same plans, understood immediately what they meant, and paid Orban 4 times what he had asked from the Byzantines. The cannon was cast. It took 2 months to build. It required 60 oxen and 200 men to move. And on April 6, 1453, it began firing at the Theodosian walls. The walls that had never been breached in 1,000 years. The walls held for 55 days. Then they didn't. So, here is the question. What if Constantine XI had found the money? What if Orban's cannon had been built for Byzantium instead of for the Ottomans? The immediate answer seems obvious. Constantinople keeps the most powerful weapon in the medieval world and uses it to defend itself. But the real answer is more complicated and more interesting. Orban's cannon alone does not save Constantinople. The empire's problems were not just military. They were structural. No treasury, no population, no Western allies willing to send meaningful help. The cannon might have held Mehmed back in 1453, but Mehmed was 21 years old in 1453. He had decades ahead of him. He would have come back. What the cannon does is buy time, and in history, Time is everything. A Constantinople that survives 1453 is not a strong Constantinople. It is a wounded, exhausted, barely surviving Constantinople, but one that still controls the Bosphorus. And the Bosphorus is the key to everything. The strait between Europe and Asia, the passage between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. Every merchant ship, every military fleet, every trade route connecting east and west passes through that narrow channel. In our timeline, Mehmed's capture of Constantinople gave the Ottomans control of that passage. European merchants, Venetians, Genoese, Portuguese, suddenly found their eastern trade routes choked. Prices rose. Alternatives were sought. Within 40 years, a Genoese sailor named Christopher Columbus was trying to reach Asia by sailing west. A surviving Constantinople changes this completely. The trade routes stay open, or at least contested, not controlled. European merchants retain access to Eastern goods through Byzantine-controlled straits. The desperate search for alternative routes to Asia is less urgent. The voyages that discovered the Americas, driven partly by Ottoman control of Eastern trade, may not happen on the same timeline, under the same flags, in the same way. The map of the modern world, redrawn by one unlocked gate. And there is something else. When Constantinople fell, its scholars fled west. Greek manuscripts, Plato, Aristotle, Thucydides, centuries of Byzantine scholarship flooded into Italy. The humanist circles of Florence and Venice absorbed this knowledge, debated it, built on it. Historians have long connected the fall of Constantinople to the acceleration of the Renaissance. A surviving Constantinople means those scholars stay. The manuscripts stay. The intellectual tradition continues in the East, not as a wave of refugees bringing lost knowledge to Italy, but as a living civilization still reading, still writing, still thinking. Does the Renaissance still happen? Almost certainly yes. The forces driving it were already in motion in Italy, but it happens differently, with different sources, different connections, different ideas arriving at different times through different hands. And then there is Russia. When Constantinople fell, Moscow's prince declared his city the Third Rome, the new center of Orthodox Christianity, the true heir of the empire that had just died. Russian czars traced their legitimacy to this claim for centuries. The entire political and religious identity of the Russian state was shaped by the fall of a city 2,000 kilometers away. A surviving Constantinople means no Third Rome, no Moscow as the center of Orthodox civilization. The relationship between Russia and the Christian world develops differently, with a living Byzantine empire still there, still claiming the original throne. One canon, one decision, one empty treasury. Constantinople did not fall because Mehmed II was invincible. It fell because 1,000 years of decline had left it too poor to afford the one weapon that might have held him back. And that weapon ended up in his hands instead. The cannon that destroyed the last Roman Empire was built for Rome first. They just couldn't pay for it. Next episode, D-Day fails. The Allied invasion of Normandy is turned back, and we ask what happens to a war that loses its greatest turning point.